I want to thank both Emily and David for their wonderful presentations and topics that they brought today. I guess that's the problem when you're third in the presentation. But more seriously, I'm also thankful to be part of such a valuable conversation taking place on this campus, and thankful to everyone who's been a part of making it so. So with that, I will be talking about conversations that matter, and how a thriving public sphere makes better citizens and better neighbors. Decline, division, polarization. Those are just a few of the words that frequent news headlines, mouths of politicians, and scholarly research when talking about the current political, social, and economic situations facing the United States. From the narratives of America's declining economy and infrastructure to the more internal divisions that were exposed during the 2016 presidential election cycle, the visions and reality of decline are seemingly everywhere. But this is not new. Recent events may have highlighted and brought to light more serious divisions among American citizens and worsening attitudes towards politics and democracy, but this is not entirely a new concept. In fact, going deeper than the cosmetic decline reveals a more disheartening decline of neighborliness and citizenship that affects how people interact, how they communicate, and participate in community and overall overcome difference. And this loss is devastating to the American way of life. Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone analyzes the phenomena of how American community is collapsing and what the possibilities might be for the future. Decreased citizenship comes in many forms, one of which is political participation. By and large, compared to its own history, the United States has struggled to maintain a healthy level of voting. According to Putnam, it is by a substantial margin the most common form of political activity and embodies the most fundamental democratic principle of equality. Additionally, there is a lack of interest among the current generation of young adults in politics and current events. More than the concern for the fact itself is the idea that the generation was more educated than previous generations, but also they had more access to political information and resources like the internet. Along with political participation, less civic engagement is a sign of decreased citizenship. Less involvement with organizations like PTA and other volunteer groups is becoming more and more the norm. Even as memberships stay ahead or remain close to previous generations, there is a lack of actual participation and leadership in things like attendance at meetings, according to Putnam. So an important discussion moving forward from recognizing these inevitable and growing declines is how to improve community, or more specifically, how to make Americans better citizens and better neighbors once again. Of course, there's no one right prescription that restores the neighborhoods of old, but there are community initiatives that seem to bring back a vibrant public sphere that nurtures relationships and welcomes difference. So what is the public sphere and why is it important? A thriving public sphere creates a space where conversation, debate, and learning can take place. One of the early theorists that explored this idea, Jürgen Habermas, detailed a space that was designated for people to engage in political participation through conversation, and it was also a place for deliberating common affairs and having discursive interaction. In this space, there's the expectation of citizens engaging in open-ended conversations where the participants aren't talking for themselves, but they're instead taking on a second-person attitude, causing them to see both their own position and understanding the other sides. Unlike today's society fraught with social media arguments and little discussion that values listening and learning, this seeks to take difference that can divide and use it productively to have conversation. I argue that revitalizing the public sphere is the key to improving neighborliness and citizenship declines. Creating communities where neighbors and citizens want to participate in activities helps return conversation, trust, and responsibility, which can counteract the division and the decline. Plenty of scholars attest to the sort of benefits that come from such a sphere. Jim Deers argues that beyond the visible financial and material gains are the social benefits that come from having a strong sense of community. No amount of public safety can buy the kind of security that comes from neighbors watching out for one another. And as Danielle Allen argues, interactions, small and large, can draw citizens into networks of mutual responsibility, and it starts with the kind of conversation that Habermas described, the kind where people don't argue for their own views and perspectives, but at least can engage in a differing perspective. This does not just limit the type of dangerous polarization that goes on in today's politics, but it is a way of being a better citizen and a more caring neighbor. How to facilitate a return to the public sphere will vary from community to community and from neighborhood to neighborhood. But I would like to draw our attention here to two overarching methods of civic engagement practices and community planning initiatives. Civic engagement, broadly defined, is organized, voluntary activity focused on problem solving and helping others. Unlike direct political engagement, whose activities are directly directed at influencing government action, civic activities seek to influence and affect communities, politically, socially, and otherwise. Developing a community with citizens and neighbors that are engaged with one another and their neighborhood is being examined here as a means of revitalizing the public sphere. Living room conversations serves as the example of how this can be accomplished. Living room conversations is a way of furthering dialogue that is meant to empower everyday citizens to discuss important issues with friends of different political affiliations and backgrounds. Those who founded the practice believed that starting simple and going back to the basics of conversation was actually a platform for developing solutions for some of the challenges society is facing today. The website where this practice is published offers resources, topics, and guidance to help people plan and integrate this conversation style into their lives. The planner is asked to choose a host and participants, of which there should be a good representation of differing perspectives. It should be obvious, but sometimes isn't. Then a date and a location are chosen, and people have time and resources to prepare to have such a conversation. The location should be comfortable to people that are participating in it. Then a conversation can take place. These are not without ground rules, however. To summarize, participants are asked to be curious and open, to show respect and suspend judgment, find common ground, appreciate difference, to be authentic and welcoming, to be purposeful and to the point, and overall to own and guide the conversation. Living room conversations and other civic engagement practices offer encouraging alternatives to the divisive narrative that is today's political environment. They put people in conversation with one another and allow space for topics that people either shy away from or to which they frequently bring preconceptions and attitudes. As far as improving citizenship, an acute awareness of political issues and being engaged in conversations with that focus is productive. However, one challenge of this method would be to use it as a tool of improving neighborliness. If completed among people who are actually neighbors and not strangers, then conversations may be more fruitful, but getting people to interact with their neighbors that they don't share a strong background with could introduce obstacles like a lack of trust, a lack of understanding, and less comfortability overall. However, the cause of facilitating neighborliness is not lost in using this as a method. In fact, intentional, respectful conversations like this, done formally or even informally, can create a small connection, a part of that network of responsibility that Alan was discussing. And when that network grows, so do responsibilities to those who are a part of it, which in some cases could be our neighbors. While civic engagement activities are one way of trying to improve neighborliness and citizenship of a place, bringing it back to the public sphere once again, there's also the use of community planning initiatives that change how community looks or is structured. And it's another method of trying to reach the same goal. Community planning is the process of long-term thinking and planning for projects that will further develop a community physically. The goals of these projects can range from improving sustainability to increasing feelings of safety in a neighborhood, as well as trying to improve economic growth and other community needs. But they ultimately, overall, try and better neighborhoods for the residents and citizens that are a part of them. This method focuses less on trying to get people to have uncomfortable conversations and more on creating an environment where they happen naturally, and examining what types of initiatives in the physical planning of a neighborhood would bring residents back to the public sphere. Constructing more sidewalks can be identified. Urban planners and others involved in the process that physically builds a place, they have a unique responsibility to, at minimum, consider how a community will utilize that space. And knowing where to put public walkways is a key component to that. Sidewalks are more than just a connector from place to place or a method of transportation. They've long been related to the idea of public space. Mayors and city planners in cities all over the globe have been innovators in more of mixed use of sidewalks, making them places for selling food and goods, relaxation and leisurely activities, as well as for the normal traffic of transportation. Sidewalks are also key to public interaction. If done properly, an ordinary citizen can move through her world with heightened attentiveness to which spaces are safe enough for talking to strangers. These structures are shared, bringing people into the public sphere where they can meet strangers, participate in activities, and communicate. And on Valco's campus, frequently get lost. Perhaps more clearly than the living room conversation model, increased use of sidewalks brings an element of the public sphere directly into the lives of citizens who transport themselves from place to place, at least in part with the help of sidewalks. However, the intentional engagement piece could be missing. A user of a sidewalk may meet someone by happenstance, but the choice to engage in a conversation is just that, a choice. Even so, the placement and use of these in neighborhoods brings people of a community together where interaction can be the formation of a network, a relationship, and maybe even a responsibility. America has a lot of work to do to create citizens and neighbors that can counteract the decline, division, and polarization that plagues the country. No small change will do it. No one kind of change will do it. But more productive conversation and creating places for that to happen is a place to start. Civic engagement and community planning initiatives have the ability to accomplish that goal of returning to the public sphere in a few unique ways. But apart, they only do a part of the work. A mixture of the two could build a type of public sphere with spaces that encourage meeting strangers, like sidewalks, and having conversations that address and engage in topics that are important, albeit historically polarizing. Even small actions can make important improvements in attitude that can make a more informed citizen and a more caring neighbor. Thank you.